Let me start this video by really saying that I love my Canon R6 a lot. When I first got the camera, I was extremely excited to take advantage of all the new features I had at my fingertips because I had hopped over from the 5D Mark IV, and this was my first step into the mirrorless world. And ultimately, I'm very happy with this decision and I'm not looking back. However, these are the three things that caused me the most heartache and wish that I knew before hopping into the Canon R6. So let's get straight to it. And number one is actually the 4K recording capabilities. Now, I'm not going to say that the 4K is bad. In fact, I actually really love the 4K capabilities of this camera. The issue is actually with the codec. You see, this camera pretty much records in H.265, which is a very labor-intensive codec, especially when you're doing something like video editing. So although I am able to take advantage of 4K HQ PDR mode or whatever the modes are called, I find it pretty much impossible to use practically because it just completely slows down my editing software, and I have a pretty good gaming laptop that I use for editing. Of course, there's workarounds, like people have said use proxies, and that's useful if I'm doing something like this where it's a talking head video, but when it's multiple clips and not just one master clip, say a wedding video, it becomes annoying to have to make proxies for every single clip that you have in your memory card. As of this recording, there is still no all-eye option. If there was an all-eye option, it would help tremendously with me. But otherwise, I would say this camera is perfectly fine in the 4K. Just know that the codec is a little bit labor-intensive. Next is actually the RF lens mount. Now, I gotta say, I absolutely love the RF series that Canon is releasing when it comes to their new mirrorless cameras. These lenses are amazingly sharp, really good quality, really smart when it comes to autofocusing and speed and tracking and all of those things. However, what I don't like is how exorbitantly expensive these lenses are. Luckily for the 50mm 1.8, it's pretty much the same exact price as its EF predecessor. But when we look at something like the 50mm 1.2, it's about $1,000 difference between the EF model and the RF model. I don't think that these lenses are worth that much more than their EF predecessors, but I do understand that lenses retain their value more, and they are going to be part of the new future lineup of mirrorless cameras that Canon's going to be releasing over the next indefinite amount of time. This isn't the end of the world, but like I said, it just becomes a very expensive transition. But if you do have EF lenses, there is a workaround. Simply use the EF to RF adapter. I found that this is perfectly fine. It doesn't crop anything. It doesn't lose quality. In fact, it actually improves the autofocus capabilities of the old EF lenses. So you might be happily surprised, and this may not be such a big issue for you if you have a good EF lineup in the first place. But I am going to be investing in RF lens. I'm not that disappointed by it. It's just going to take a lot longer to build that lineup because of how much more expensive the RF lenses are compared to their EF counterparts. Last but not least, I do believe that it was announced earlier that they're not going to be allowing third-party members to make RF lenses. So if you're going to get an RF lens, it has to come directly from Canon, which once again may be why they have these prices so jacked up. Alright, and probably the biggest gripe I have with this camera is, of course, the overheating. Now I know they've done a bunch of firmware updates, so apparently this overheating issue is not as bad as it was when the camera was first released. However, when I have shot outside for extended periods of time, the camera still overheats. And I can completely understand because I do live in a really hot state, Southern California. However, I never had this issue with the 5D Mark IV. I feel like that thing was a beast and could take recordings for extended periods of time in these really hot conditions, and I never had a overheat warning. So it's just really disappointing that the R6 and the R5 still have this overheating issue. I know that not everyone's going to be in very hot conditions like I am, say SoCal, but if you are, this may be something that is a big deterrent. There are, of course, ways to prevent the overheating. You can have like a fan on you and like kind of blow on the camera. Or if you don't want to shoot in 4K, that also helps. It's just unfortunate because I would love to take advantage of the HD PQR mode. But if I'm outside shooting, it's not really practical because now I'm just going to run the risk of overheating this camera and not being able to shoot for another 10-20 minutes. And there you have it. Those are the three things that I find frustrating about this camera. Once again, I really love this camera. No hate, no shade. I'm not going to return it or anything. But these three issues may be a deal breaker for you if this interferes with your workflow. And honestly, some of these issues may not even really apply to you if you're in a cold climate, you have good hardware that can handle this codec when you're shooting in 4K, and if you have the money and you don't mind the investment into the RF lenses, because after all, that is the future. We're all going to have to update eventually. So if that's not a big issue, then honestly, these three problems aren't really problems for you. However, if you're like me and you're in a hotter climate, you don't have all the proper equipment to edit all this 4K footage in a specific codec, and of course, you don't have all the money to upgrade immediately your RF lenses, it may be a deterrent to actually buying this camera. So it's just something to consider. Of course, make your own decisions. I imagine you're actually watching this video because you're researching the camera. So I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please leave a like button. It really helps the channel. And of course, subscribe because I have more R6 and filmmaking videos coming out shortly. If you have any thoughts, please leave your comments down below. I love reading them and I like answering them. You may also inspire me to do another video if you have any questions about the R6. So with that, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.